With Andrew, though, I suppose he can't really plead that kind of ignorance or wishful thinking because he was allegedly engaging in the very activities that we know Epstein was doing.
Yes. Well, I mean, as I understand it, Prince William, was pretty anti his uncle and wanted him kept out of the loop. And I think Harry was also of the same mind. And it was Charles who was more willing to tolerate his brother.
Wow. That's interesting. So and why might that be? Because I have heard that, Andrew, aside from the Epstein allegations, is also a pretty horrible character. Just that's the opinions of
Andrew is horrible to his staff. I mean, the legendary, the abuse he shouts at his staff, shouts at police officers when he arrives at Buckingham Palace. When he arrived at Buckingham Palace and the gates weren't open immediately, he would then abuse the police down the phone. The famous episode in Windsor Great Park when the gates didn't open, which has been humorously called Gate, when he, rather than just taking a short detour to his house, rammed these gates until they opened with his Range Rover, caused, I think it was £80,000 of damage, which the taxpayer picked up because it was money paid for by the Crown Estate, and the Crown Estate that came off the Crown Estate's profits, which goes to the Treasury.
I suppose we should get into what Andrew has actually been doing on Epstein Island, or what we imagine he's been doing. What's actually going on?
Well, it's not entirely clear what's been going on. We have various accounts which are contradictory. His own account, of course, is the kind of Manuel excuse, I know nothing, which bears little scrutiny, to be honest with you, because he's been photographed with Epstein in New York and Central Park, apart from anything else. We know from the plane logs he's been to this island of his, this disreputable island, on many occasions. The latest information that came out suggested he'd received massages regularly at his house. So all those have been put in the public domain. Virginia Giuffre, of course, has made many allegations. Andrew denied them vehemently. He then paid her off, I think, was it £12 million?
Something.
I have to say it's quite extraordinary to give £12 million to a woman you never met, which is allegedly what he's doing. I've never met Prince Andrew, so perhaps you give me £12 million as well. Yeah. So, I mean, the whole thing is just stinks to high heaven, to be perfectly frank with you.
How much is £12 million for a man like Andrew?
Well, it's difficult to know because, of course, the royal family keeps their money details very secret indeed. And when parliamentarians have tried to find out how much the royal family has, they're not told, because the royal family always pleads poverty. We're running out of money. We have to sell a castle or something. And then Parliament says, well, how much have you got? We don't say. So they never reveal this. And they've exempted themselves largely from the Freedom of Information Act, so we can't really find out. It's quite extraordinary and unbelievable, really, when you compare our monarchy with other monarchies in terms of how secret they are and how rich they are. But Andrew was making a comfortable living, I think, from his activities with dubious dictators around the world. I've set them all out in my book in the chapter, The Grand Old Duke of Sleaze, with various countries. The more unpleasant the dictator, the happier he seemed to be associating with them and spending time with them. We know of particular instances when he was offered large-scale commissions, up to £3 million in one case, just for making a couple of phone calls or sending a couple of emails. So it doesn't take very many of those for him to bring the money in. The reason we don't know definitively is because, of course, Fergie, his other half, who's never quite married to him, never quite divorced either, she's like a colander. You pour money in at one end and it goes out the other end. So she's legendary for spending money. So quite how much money he's got, we don't know. They did manage to buy this ski chalet in Switzerland. I think it was £17 million thereabouts. One wonders how they managed to afford that, because officially Andrew's income was, I think, from the Queen, 150,000 a year and 20,000 for his naval pension. That doesn't add up to a ski chalet in Switzerland. So you have to wonder where the money came from. Has never been properly explained. He did, of course, manage to secure a loan or a grant of money, a donation from Epstein to help pay off Fergie's debts in about 2009, 2010. When this was put to Sarah Ferguson, she said, "Oh yes, well that was a mistake, a grotesque mistake, and I'll pay it back." Well, in 2015, she was after she paid it back, and she said no comment. So one has to assume she hasn't paid it back.
So what was that? It was loan, did you say Epstein?
That was to help pay off her debts. Sarah Ferguson was always in debt. She always spent money like water.
And they got a loan from Epstein?
And she got either a loan or a grant of money from Epstein, and I don't think it was ever paid back.
Oh, but once that starts happening, once you're in the pocket of... I mean, that sort of implicates her in the whole Epstein.
Well, it does. But we know as well that there's been episodes where she has sat down with journalists, effectively closet journalists, who are running a scam and asking for £500,000 for access to Andrew. That's been filmed. So she's not averse to selling the royal family for money, as indeed Andrew isn't.
And Prince Harry, but we can get into that in a bit with regards to selling information to his family and by writing his book, I think. But that's interesting. Are the kids then victims? He's got, what is it, 2 kids, is it?
Well, I mean, the kids aren't responsible for their parents. That's the case with those 2 daughters, and it's the case with any children. You can't label the sins of the parents and put them on the children. So, I mean, as far as I can tell, they're not guilty of the sort of things that their mother and father have been doing.
Must be a very difficult time for them.
Well, I'm not sure it's terribly difficult. They are in the royal family. They've got plenty of money. They've got plenty of connections. I mean, I'm not really crying my heart out for them.
They're still people, though. And that's what you're used to. You're born into that. You're sort of used to that status, and then all of a sudden, in the papers everywhere, your father's linked to the worst possible thing in the world. Yes,
it's not great having a dad linked to something like that. That's certainly true.
Yeah, I feel a bit sorry for that. I don't know too much about them. What is it, Eugenie and
Beatrice? Yeah.
I don't know. I feel a bit I don't know enough about them.
I think they've had doors opened for them as a consequence of their royal connection, so it works both ways.
It does, yeah. But even to think back on that, you'd be aghast, thinking, a lot of the stuff that's happened in my life is owed to Epstein.
Well, I don't think that's pushing it a bit far. I mean, they would have got all doors open to them whether or not their dad was associated with Epstein or not. I mean, that would happen automatically to members of the royal family.
What are the ramifications for Andrew? Because you mentioned firstly, okay, now this has been brought up again and Charles can't quite bring him back into the fold. But can royals be investigated the same way the rest of us can?
In theory, apart from the king can't be, because in theory, every action taken by the police or by the courts is done in the name of the king. Hence, when it was the Queen, it was Regina versus so-and-so. You can't prosecute yourself. When the Queen was stopped for not wearing a seatbelt in her car, as to when she was driving, she couldn't be prosecuted for it. In theory, she could have murdered someone and not be prosecuted for it. Any member of the royal family who is not the monarch is a normal citizen and can be prosecuted for anything which they have done. It's up to the police to investigate it. Of course, the police have been extremely reluctant to investigate anything to do with Andrew. They've been asked a number of times by me and by Graham Smith at the Republic Group and by others, and they've not chosen to do so. As far as I'm concerned, the case is closed. It's embarrassing for them to look into this. I asked the police to look into an incident where we had written evidence that Michael Fawcett, acting on behalf of Charles, his extremely close friend and associate, Michael Fawcett, the man that Charles cannot do without, the letter from Michael Fawcett to a Middle Eastern gentleman, basically offering help with nationality and help with honours in return for a donation to the Prince's charity. That is a contradiction, in my view, an offence under the 1925 Honours Act, to sell honours. I reported that to the police. You couldn't get a more black and white case. I had to keep pushing them. I don't know if you know the phrase in railway terms, dead man's handle. The dead man's handle on the train is where the train driver has to keep his hand on the handle. And if he has a heart attack, he falls backwards and the train stops because the handle comes back.
Okay.
And dead man's handle, it was like that with the police. You had to keep pushing this handle for them to do anything. And eventually they turned around and said they weren't going to do anything with it. So, you can't get a more open and shut case, in my view, than that. So they don't want to investigate people like the Rolls because they are famous and it's embarrassing for the police. They don't want bad headlines. So much easier to pick on someone in Peckham, isn't it, than pick on someone in the royal family. We do have a two-tier system in that sense. But yes, they are legally subject to the law, same as everybody else, and the police ought to bear that in mind.
Have you had anything further than pushback over the years by talking about the royals, by talking about their crimes and things like that?
Well, I mean, obviously, I'm not flavour of the month with Buckingham Palace. On the odd occasion when I've met a member of the royal family, they've generally been quite keen to ignore me and pretend I'm not there, which I find quite amusing. When I was made a member of the Privy Council, which required me to kiss hands with the Queen, which I thought was quite funny. I'm sure I was wondering why I was there, and she was wondering why I was there. But yeah. Other than that, in fact, the member of the royal family who was quite pleasant to me was Charles. When I met him, he was quite engaging.
Did you kiss her hand, the Queen?
Yes.
Did she kiss yours?
No, it doesn't work that way.
It should do. It should do. Well, bloody hell. So, okay, still just on Andrew for a moment. I'm trying to work out, is he a complete idiot? Is the guy just a complete idiot?
He's not very bright. I mean, look, he's not very bright. He's very rude to his staff. We talked about that earlier on.
Yeah.
And he's very unpleasant to people.
Teddy bears?
Yes, I mean, he's not quite all there, is he? I mean, he has these teddy bears lined up in his room. I've forgotten how many it is, 64, I think it is. They all have to be lined up in exactly the right way, in the right place. When a new member of staff comes in, they're given a day's training on where the teddy bears go.
Shut up.
No, they are. He had it at his house, which he shared with Fergie. He had a toilet roll holder that played "God Save the Queen" when you pulled the paper out. I mean, he's not really all there, is he?
Doesn't seem like it. And then, like some of the lies he came up with to cover himself. I don't sweat. What is he talking about?
Well, of course, and Pizza Express. He's not terribly bright, and it shows, I'm afraid. If you're going to be a liar, you're going to have to be a good liar. And that's, I'm afraid, he isn't. On the Pizza Express, by the way, is another example where the police are being deliberately unhelpful because they know where he was that night, because they have a security detail. At the time he was given security, I don't know if he still is, I don't think he is. He was given security cover at that point as a working royal. And these records from the police are not thrown away. They're kept for decades. So they know from the security information where he was that night. Now, I asked the police where he was, and they wouldn't tell me. And they said, we can't reveal it because it has security implications. No, it doesn't. It's 20 years ago. And it's a member of the royal family who's no longer a working royal. Why is that security implications? It doesn't. It's just embarrassing. But they can sort that out now if they want to, the police. But so can Andrew. If Andrew was genuinely keen to show that he was at Pizza Express, unlikely that it may be, rather than his nightclub, why doesn't he just say to the police, I give you authority to release that information and you can prove where I was? But he doesn't do it, does he?
How optimistic or pessimistic are you that Virginia Giuffre, his accuser, will ever see justice with regards to Andrew?
Well, I mean, she's reached some sort of deal with him, which involves him paying tribute to those who have been abused, which is kind of odd arrangement. So I don't think that will necessarily go much further. But look, I mean, if it was just Britain, the thing would be smothered over. But you can't smother the American courts because they are not going to worry whether he's a member of the royal family or not. The American courts are different. This is not unusual. If you go back to the time of Edward VIII and Mrs. Simpson back in the 1930s, which was in those days a big scandal in this country, of course, him associating with a divorcee. The rest of the world knew about that. The British papers chose not to report it. It was reported for months and months in the American press.
Wow.
So if you want to buy a paper in New York and bring it back to London, you could show your friends about it. This idea that you can keep things quiet in this country and somehow what happens in the rest of the world won't be communicated is just naive beyond belief. It's also the case what happened with Spycatcher. If you remember Spycatcher, that book written about the activities of MI5 in the 1960s by an MI5 operative. And Mr. Thatcher went ballistic and made sure that Spycatcher wasn't available in this country. Well, of course, she couldn't stop it being published in America or Australia. And on day one when that book came out, I got my friend in New York to send me a copy of it. So, we cannot shut down information which is available outside this country, and that's what the royal family still thinks he can do.
But will he see maybe in America in the inside of a prison cell?
Well, I don't think you'll see that because you have to be extradited for that. There's no way that the British would extradite Prince Andrew.
Yeah.
So, and probably the Americans wouldn't ask for it. The government wouldn't probably ask for that. But, Andrew says he wants to cooperate with the American authorities. He said that all the way through. He says that, then doesn't cooperate with them. So if he wants to be keen to clear his name, if he's an innocent, he says he is, why doesn't he go and speak to the American authorities? Why doesn't he give evidence over there? Why doesn't he get the police to reveal details of where he was on that letter Pizza Express? The things Andy can do to prove his innocence, he chooses not to do so. You have to ask why.